name is Saengmany Ratsabout. I am the Executive Director of the Eastside Freedom Library here. Thanks for the folks who are here in person at the library on the east side of St. Paul. The Eastside Freedom Library is an independent nonprofit library. We try to work at the intersection of immigration history, labor history, and social movements. The intersections of issues, the intersections around issues of race, economic injustice, and what we can do, and particularly how we use history to connect the past and present. Our mission is to inspire solidarity, advocate for justice, and work towards equity for all. And story is a major theme of Eastside Freedom Library. And the telling and gathering of stories through public programming, performances, and exhibits are some of the vehicles that we use to achieve our mission. All of this is really made possible through partnerships with individuals and organizations that really share our views that everyone has a story to tell. We are happy to be partnering with the American Composer Forum to host a series of events and conversations examining the theme of immigration, identity, and the arts. This series is part of the National Endowment for the Arts Big Read, a program of the National Endowment for the Arts and in partnership with Arts Midwest. The National Endowment for the Arts Big Read is designed to broaden our understanding of our world, our communities, and ourselves through the joy of sharing a good book. And so the American Composer Forum is one of the 60+ nonprofit organizations that received this grant to host an NEA Big Read project. We at the Eastside Freedom Library are happy to partner with ACF on this series. And American Composer Forum believes that music is a medium that can help us connect as humans, tell stories, and share experiences. Again, here at the Eastside Freedom Library, we have a long history of hosting study groups, partnerships, community events that really uplifts these types of stories in our community. And so together, we will be working on this series to amplify the voices, stories, arts, and music of immigrant artists and community members around the theme of immigration, identity, and the arts. Included in our events will be a discussion of and inspiration from Thi Bui's graphic memoir, The Best We Could Do. Supported by NEA's Big Read project, this book really aligns to our theme and resonate with so many members of our community. Through art and dialogue, and in connection with The Best We Could Do, the series seeks to engage in the lived experience of different immigrant populations in Minnesota and amplify their voices, stories, and music. And today I have the privilege of hosting and moderating a discussion with our esteemed guests. We have Hta Thi, and Mary Prescott here with us, who will be joining us briefly. Hta Thi was born in a Thai refugee camp in 1994. She and her family moved to the United States in 2007 and settled in St. Paul, Minnesota. The first few months in Minnesota was like entering a new world for Hta Thi and her family. Hopefully you didn't come in the middle of winter. That would be a shock for everyone. And so, you know, when Hta Thi's family were in Minnesota, Hta Thi started volunteering for the Karen organization of Minnesota during her high school years. She learned a lot by helping others and gaining more experiences. And she really built upon that by joining as staff member of the Karen organization of Minnesota as their youth development coordinator in 2015. Then in 2017, she became the coordinator for the Karen Weaving Circle program and the Civic Engagement program at KOM. Among her other roles, Hta Thi is also the program manager for the social services program at KOM. Our second guest is Mary Prescott. Mary is a Thai-American interdisciplinary artist, composer, and pianist who explores the foundations and facets of identity and social condition through experimental performances. The Washington Post described her work as masterfully envisioned, a bright light cast forward. Mary received several awards, and one of them is from the McKnight Foundation. Other awards are from the National Performance Network, New Music USA, Opera America, and many, many more. Well, for today, we will start our conversation today with a video message from Thi Bui herself, and then we'll move on to short clips, a short digital story from a long-time participant of the Karen Weaving Circle. We'll finish that off with a short excerpt from Mary's work called Hta. After the video clips, we will have a discussion with Hta Thi and Mary.
Hi, my name is Thi Bui. I'm the author of The Best We Could Do, an illustrated memoir. I'm really excited that this book is part of the NEA Big Reads for 2022 and 23. It's really exciting to have the story live on. And it's wonderful to be part of a theme about connecting neighbors, because I've always thought of it not necessarily as just an immigrant or a refugee story, but as an American story. My family is not special, as I say in the intro of the book. We're very typical of a lot of refugee and immigrant families. And it often takes decades to unravel the knot that is that experience. And so I'm very fortunate to have two parents who let me share our family's story. And I hope that communities can use my family's story to delve into the incredible complexities that exist within families like ours, the journeys we've gone through, and the things that we pass down from generation to generation, some of which are pretty hard to talk about. And I hope that our experience can be used to understand many experiences that have come to the US and continue to. So one thing I've always wanted to be asked about the book, but no one has actually ever asked me, is on the inside cover of the hardcover, in my first bio, I talk about growing up, remembering what it's like to kneel on the shag carpet and record mixtapes from the record player. And I grew up listening to Paul Simon and the Beatles. So a lot of people have asked about my Vietnamese cultural influences, but the thing is, I came here when I was very little, and the cultural influences that I had were very mixed. And this to me is identity in the US. So I'd love to be asked about how Paul Simon lyrics have influenced my writing. And I'll give you the answer. They've influenced them a lot. Life as both beauty and sadness together, and how that exists across the board. You can see it riding the bus or in your own family. This is what I took away from that music that I grew up listening to on records and recording to mixtapes.
Meme Rosisi, ye top de wa meramo, Arini, Kito Chiluba, ye to Pavada America. Ye, you put a kajit a tabadaba. Not a ye de wabun, I get a taba. Yet hal luda pale. Come up order that tag rule, bloody, while I tada still clouded there, bad tada. Yeah, you tired of Tiba and you tell you table, you tell me that redo on it. You place a man low, you lay the home. Lay you on it to meet a cotta care, Henry, but couple of say on that kind of time is saying, look to meet a cotta care. Lay you on it, you tell a redo, bam, you call it. Come up a hell of what you are calling. That klein the game more pama, made a man look at probably one, Casunia, made that color of Muhammad. Cái chuyện tới là blue love cái cha lấy cái cha ta tita bạc là tôi made mà là ta tita phản khai chui nhà này mình ta là nó mà còn khi mình ta là đi đủ cái đó mà có khoa thâu là và từ gà là mình ta xem là thâu bênนี้cho nó đến này bị thà là bị để cái để vừa là cho nó đi ở đó không nhom lớp phi điểm đã để số cho quan này ta lại hay cái đó có thể làm bài nó im này ta qua với đã có bỏ đi chả được đã chả được cái đó qua với đã đây mình mà lôi đi không nhau lấy cái đi cái đó tát khá mà rồi đi này về đi to bê lên khử này hay cái live rồi bự đó thà rồi lỡ một chỗ ba cái chỗ này nó im này qua lôi là có bỏ chả đó được rồi lúc khi đó này về bự đó mà về đã lỡ bé là đi mà cái đó lừa là đi du cái đó đã lừa ta cam anh nói hết là cái chơi từ lúc cô chú hết là có đi bật cái bài ta lấy bằng nhau ở bên mà ra này để mà nó mà khá na đi na cả là nên bây giờ chúng mo lừa bây giờ mà lừa bé để tao lừa bây giờ ba phi mà lừa nhà khai đi ta chơi đó cái gì cái khai đi này lừa này ô bà vậy là lừa lọc con này bố khu là bố bùa bây giờ thà là chỉ đểพอจ่ายด้วยเกล้าก็คลีดิตัวไปท้าแค่ดิดินนไปท้าเลยพวกเจ้าก็จีดินนด้วยไปที่เพรสเซอร์ได้ไปตระไปมุกตะโกแล้วดิว่าไปตระหาชาเชื่อว่าใช่ไหมเย่โดดเตยพูดเลยตาเมกว่าเมกเทเลนะกันนี่พวกบ้านชั่วโมงตะคาเลยยี่ตามายี่ตาเว้นี่ไม่ได้ยี่ตาเชตาลาหรอยี่ไม่แต่มาบ้านนี้ข้าสุญญาหล่อเลยพอจูแล้วนี่ก็เกล้าตาละลอบูลอมาค่ะล่ะเพราะแกปลาตะกุลุ่ยตัวนี้ปลาเชตาละปลากุลุ่ยไม่อุ้มมัวตัวนี้ปลาเชตาละก็บ้าอุ้มมัวถ้าคนนี้โมเกโพลีเกอยู่เสมอละเลยก็โมละถ้าเตกละเด้อก็เกลเซเนี่ยโลกาโพลีดิตัวโพลีก็น่าเปิดเด้อก็มาลูตรีเวลาถ้าสุติข้อบาดเจ็บ
The footstep, the silent footstep, fears to make a sound in its loneliness. It moves with the stillness of silence. It shifts the body into some other time-place, but quietly. No one sees, no one hears. She doesn't look to the outsiders.
Hi, thank you. May we have our speakers come to the stage? And for folks who are joining us virtually on either Facebook or Zoom, on our comment section, if you have any questions, please put the letter Q in front of your questions through Facebook or Zoom comments, so we know that those are our questions. We have a team here that will be moderating those questions for us. Thank you. Welcome, Mary and Tati.
Thank you.
Thanks.
For having us.
Yes. Thanks. Yeah. And so for today, I kind of want to start out with I think it's a maybe not a simple question, but so in Thi Bui's book, you know, she noted that in the best that we can do, in several other interviews. The book was originally, it kind of began as a project or history project for her family. And, you know, as she was starting to transcribe the book, the oral history, you know, it eventually became this memoir. So she mentioned in several other interviews that she's had that the project was kind of an attempt to bridge the gap between past and present. And so the question for the two of you, could you talk about your own work and how you came about in your work, Hta Thi, weaving, coordinating a weaving group, learn how to weave yourself, and Mary, your work as an artist and as a composer. You know, again, talk about your work, how you came about it, and could you also maybe talk about the theme of connecting past and present as you kind of explore and creating this through your work?
So to connect the past and the present, I think that was something that just came about pretty naturally with my project. My Thai side is a history that I didn't grow up knowing. And so when I began the project Hta, that was really in an effort to learn who I was and a side of myself that I just that had been unknown to me since I was pretty young. I didn't know much about any of my ancestors or the challenges that they went through as they migrated from China to Thailand and then eventually to Minnesota. The connection from past to present, it was interesting. It just unfolded because I developed the majority of the project so far during the pandemic. And a lot of that happened in 2020. And so I myself was feeling very isolated in my home, as many of us were. And as I learned more about my mom's ancestors and her coming to America and living here in a culture that was outside of her own, that sounded to me very isolating for her in many senses. And so the isolation that I was feeling during the pandemic felt very parallel to the isolation that I suspected she might have felt when she first arrived here. And that feeling of being disconnected from home, I asked that question many times in the piece to myself as I was developing it. What is home? What does it mean to be home? I was in my home when I was creating the project, but I felt homesick. So yeah, I mean, does that answer the question? Perhaps.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
For me, I started with recording in 2017, and through the work, it's bring me well. Before 2017, you know, I did not know much about weaving till I start working and I do more research about it. And right now, you know, bringing back in the camp where I'm from, in the Hta Thi refugee camp, I am. We wear our clothes, but we don't know how I made it, how it's made it. But here, while I am a weaving coordinator, I am learning and doing more research about how they made clothes and how they survive through the weaving.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So maybe so the next question really connects to some of your family experience as well. And Mary, you mentioned kind of researching some family history as part of this. And so in the best that we can do, Thi Bui really like interweaves different events, family history, intergenerational trauma, including the discovery of some family secrets from both her mom and her dad's side. Um, and so, Mary, for you, as part of your research in conducting your own family history as part of this work, were there any new knowledge that really surprised you about family history?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they were secrets per se, but there were some things that I didn't know before about my family. I didn't know that my grandfather had been adopted. Um, I didn't know that my great grandmother was a single mother, and I didn't know that that was something that was still she was still respected within her community, even though she was a single mother, which I think, um, in America, there is a stigma about that, or which is being undone now. But I guess I had the presumption that there would have been a stigma for her, um, and she was very lucky in that sense that she was still very respected by her community, and she was thought of as a very good woman. So um, that was something that surprised me, and that I hadn't known before.
One thing that surprised me through the book, I did not finish it. I go through the first chapter, and then our parents back in the day, they are very strict in about you know being together or live together before marriage not acceptable. But right now, a lot of parents, like my personally my parents, they don't. Um, they are strict, but not very strict. They're not gonna punish us like people in the original, but they're acceptable. But they can't do anything because it already happened. But it's not acceptable among our community.
And so maybe a follow up to that, Tati, is like so growing up, while we were kind of talking before this, you mentioned that you were born in a refugee camp. You didn't really know like some of the history behind the conflicts and the trauma that um, your parents and folks like them had experienced. And so, growing up and hearing all these stories about escaping conflicts and life in refugee camps from your parents, but also from the weavers that you've coordinated the program. Like and how did did you find any other surprises? And so, for example, for me as a refugee kid, I was born in Laos, but I kind of was in a refugee camp when I was 3. Like some of these images and knowledge seem very blurry and dreamy to me. For me, trying to figure out was that really my own knowledge and memory of that experience, or from experiences from hearing these stories from parents. And so, did you kind of experience that aspect as well? And again, back to like, were there any surprises about the history and the conflict?
I was told when I was 2 or 3, my parents have to run. I don't know what's happening at age 2 or 3, but my parents told me we did had that experience by present. But my parents, my family, and the elders, the weavers, they go through that. And then one thing that traumatized them is when Independence Day on July 4th, there is a firework, and then when they heard the sound, it brings back the memory when have to go through the war, and then there's a bomb that being thrown down at their village during their nighttime and sleepy time. So they don't really enjoy that sound. But for us, came here, it's like it's a holiday. We got off, we celebrate foods, and we go out at night. There's a firework, and we really enjoy that. But for our elders, for our weavers, they um, it it's kind of bring the memory, is traumatize them with the bomb and all the sounds. And one thing that surprised me, well, when I was in school back in the Thailand refugee camp, there's a group like and they create a video, and then they go back to they're the frontliner, they record video, and then they bring those video to the refugee camp because we did not experience, so they show us a video. And I don't know, I don't know if it's a surprise or I'm not surprised anymore that it's been like through, it's right now happening right now, like right now in Thailand or in Burma borders, maybe nighttime, or it's a early, yeah, it's a nighttime over there. They might it's happening right now every day, every week. We always see the news, they have to run, not only our current civilians, other different civilians that who live in Burma. And then they, like for our people, they live close to Thailand border, so they can run through it. But some other civilians who live in the Burma refugee camp, they or Burma, they don't know where to go and they lost everything. So that's, I guess that's one thing that surprised me. Not right now, not only our current people, they are suffering, other minor ethnic who are suffering too.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So we can move on to talk specifically about your artwork, both the weaving, but also the multiple things that you do, Mary. And so so in the book, Thi Bui like intentionally left names of places and individuals in the Vietnamese language itself, right? And the spelling of it, diacritic spelling of those names and places. She left it in Vietnamese, and so in interviews that she have had, T mentioned that she was always writing for us Vietnamese people, and so the existence of Vietnamese words being spelled in Vietnamese with the proper diacritics, people like me can read. And so that was really her inspiration in doing that. She was writing for her community, her people. And so to that same effect, in the line of your work, Mary and Tati, who is the target audience of your work? And just like how the musician Paul Simon influenced Thi Bui, like who influenced your work? So two questions: your target audience and who influenced you.
Well, I feel like um, as I was growing up, I didn't have uh, I didn't have too many role models that looked like me or were like me, to see that they're making things, um, and sharing their stories. I feel like, actually, Thi Bui mentioned in the talk that we just listened to that that her family is ordinary, and my family is ordinary, and it felt like, what would be so special about that? What's the significance of that? But we all have a story, and so part of what I would like to do with my work is to be able to share my family's story and what is considered an ordinary story, with with others, with the public at large. Just because I think we all have a kind of a shared experience in that way. We all have, in our ordinariness, we have something special. Um, And and at the same time, I, as a biracial person, it's something that is a bit unique, that I am the product of multiple cultures, and that in and of itself is a story that isn't shared very often in uh, in in pop culture. Um, so that's one of my hopes, is that my work can spread that story. The other thing is that I would hope that there are kids that might be like me that can see there's somebody who is sharing their story and they're achieving something, and maybe my story is important too. Um, so the other part of your question was who influences me. There's a wonderful artist. Her name is Matana Roberts, and they have a collection of albums called Coin Coin, and they're a descendant of slaves. And so in these Coin Coin albums, they're sharing the past of what happened in their family, in such a way that it feels like a diorama, like a sound diorama. So you really feel like you're in that experience for the moment of hearing the music. And that really touched me in a very deep way, um, and shared their story in such a profound sense that I could really feel a sense of understanding of what they'd gone through and what brought them to where they are now.
Thank you, and Hta Thi?
Yeah, my target audience would be, I'll say, all ages, because it's very important for us to know where we are come from, and then we did tell a story, and then it's important to know how our materials are made of. And for my the other question, the influence, I don't have like specific um, artists or influence. I like all of them are they are words or the arts the artists that influenced me. I'll say the songwriter or the singer, you know, they write or sing about the importance part, and then the country, the suffering of our current people. And then right now a lot of young artists are, you know, they're here, so English is their first language. So when they make music, they um, able to do it in English, so that other people, you know, can understand what's they're feeling, how they're going through, and then at the same times, they know what their, you know, people have to go through, and then they write their feeling about it. So I influence all those artists, and also we do have artists who um, paint and draw pictures about our history, so that our new generation will learn and then we know about our history.
Yeah, so maybe a follow-up to that, Hta Thi, is so the video clip that we watched earlier, Rosie mentioned that the weaving kind of came out of folks looking at like the spider weaving its web, and so that had influence, right? The folktale that has influenced Karen people to start the weaving. So as you work with the weavers, but also as you learn how to weave it yourself, are there any specific designs that kind of embody some of these folk tales and stories?
Yes, well, you know, weaving and sewing, it's backstrap weaving, so you have to sit, and then for the regular one, it's easier, you can just sit. But then if it's a bigger, you know, it's longer, and then you won't be able to sit for so long. And then for the some of the patterns, because you want the different color at the same time, so you need to pull the color individually. And it is, you know, at first I thought, oh, I rather bought it, you know, instead of making myself. But then later on I just realized that, oh, these weavers are, you know, they are, you know, older than me. They've have a back problem, they have other things, but then they don't want to give up. They want our weaving process to be alive. They don't want the culture to disappear. So even though they're all the back pain, they still come and teach the youth during the summer program. So it's that's their their influence me, inspire me to not to give up, to learn, and then so I can be a teacher for the next generation, so that the weaving parts will be, be told by a story, or will be continues to live.
Wonderful, thank you. So Mary, the clip that we saw, it's very a short excerpt. It was about an hour long, which was great. And so the performance is titled Tida, right? Which from my understanding, it's translated as child, daughter, or even angel. Could you say more about how you came up with the title of that specific work and how it really connect with you learning about all this family history?
Yeah, it was actually a pretty easy title to come up with because it's my middle name. Tida. Yeah. And uh, just because of the themes of my work, it's about maternal ancestry, and how that passageway of maternal legacy has come through my mom's lineage. I just thought it was quite fitting to title it with this name, and how that connects me to the past. And I'll also say too, it's a name that the rest of my name, Mary Prescott, is, I feel like I walk into places and I show up and people aren't expecting this person to show up with the name Mary Prescott. And Tida was kind of always, it's a middle name, so it was a bit buried by my first name and last name. And in school, growing up here in Minneapolis, I think I always was a little bit embarrassed about it too, because it's not typical. And so it felt like something that would make me stick out as like different. And so then when I started working on this project, I think I wanted to highlight that side of myself too, that I had kind of placed as a second row, you know. So yeah, it was an attempt to honor my heritage. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks for that. So before we move on, so again, for folks who are viewing on Zoom or Facebook, if you have any questions, please type them into the comment section with the letter Q in front of your question. And so the last question from me is, Hta Thi, and so how has your work in coordinating and managing the weaving circle kind of changed your relationship with community elders, such as the weavers themselves and your own parents?
Through the work, it helped me appreciate more. I I appreciate more than I did before, because back in the day, we don't get to learn our own language in the school. So when I came here, there's opportunity. It's grateful to be part of the East African Library, to get the space to weave basement. And the weavers are feel safe and supported by East African Library down here. That when anytime when there is event, they want to use the space here, they feel like home. And we're because back in the day, back in the refugee camp, I don't know how my clothes are made, and right now I learned, so I appreciate more than I appreciate before. And the students are, they feel important because they see through the weavers, even though they're not they are not, when they come here, they don't feel that they're not useful. They don't speak English. They can't do this and that. They are very weak. But then they do have a strength of weaving, that they are master weavers. So they do have that knowledge with them, so that they can pass through the generations. So at the same time, the weavers are encourage me, to, even though we can't do this, we do have other things that we can do that other people can do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And so before we go to audience questions, do either of you have questions for each other?
Well, I'm grew up and born and raised in refugee camp, but in my camp we don't learn Thai, so I don't speak Thai. But my mom, she did grow up in a small village in Thailand, so she can speak Thai. But then for me, I don't speak Thai, so I know your parents. I don't know, do they speak their own language, Thai or different?
My mom speaks Thai, and she speaks a dialect also from her town, Songkhla. I don't really speak Thai. I can say a few things, and I can also express my dismay quite well. um, but aside from that, I just know a few words. Actually, we were just last night. I was trying to recall some Thai words that I learned when I was visiting Thailand. I was just trying to recall a few things that I'd learned along the way, so I can say things like, where's the bathroom, or I can say, don't do that, or hurry up, or yeah. Can you do those? Do you know those?
I'll say like I can speak 10% or understand by watching the movie, and then um, we did. A lot of people, they can speak because their parents, or they speak them most of the time. But in Thailand refugee camp, we learn a lot of things in Korean in our own language, and then but like for math and science and geography, we learn those in Korean. But in English subject, we will learn in English. But then when we teacher explains it, we explain in Korean. So, but here, a lot of kids are growing up here. The English is their first language, and then Korean is second language. So it's hard for them to communicate with their parents, who do not speak English. So it's a communication problem within among our community right now.
Any question from you, Mary Hta Thi, before I move on?
Well, this is just off the top of my head, but I love the weavings. How much time during the week would you say that you spend doing weaving, working on that?
We come here every Wednesday, 10 to 2. Sometimes during those hours, the weavers weave, and then sometimes they might have a letters, or they might need help with some other social work, so I help them those. Sometimes we have a guest speakers, and then I'll say like sometimes some weeks like an hour, sometimes 30 minutes to weave on my own to learn that much. Not a lot, but that's quite a sit of time. 30 minutes with you're not used to it, like within sitting on the floor, on the hard floor. There's a friend of us create a stool for us that you can sit on the stool and weave with extra weaving, so that you can move back and forth. But then the weavers are not used to it, so they used to on the hard floor. So that's what they've been doing on the hard floor.
I have more questions.
Yes.
So as you're continuing the practice of weaving, are you continuing to evolve the designs, or do you stay with traditional designs?
The weaver itself, I'm just do the regular one. So the weaver itself, we are there right now. They used to weave like their own patterns, like a diamond and flower, and they have their own meaning with different region. And right now, when we're doing like event like this and the topic like this, when we ask the weaver to weave, they can. We went to the library, and I we're looking for a stitch book, and then they can look for the alphabet, so they can weave alphabet. Yeah, and then they can weave like spider, and because we're asking them to weave telling a story through weaving. So they will weave like a house and a cat, and it's their village, and they can weave those. They come up with those designs using the cross stitch pattern. So yeah, they did create a new design, and then the traditional, the same time they still keeping the traditional pattern too. They add those like in here and there, and then they make their new design.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm gonna open the questions to the audience. If folks here in person have any questions, please come up to the mic. No questions so far. I will go to, were you coming up? Yep.
So I'm curious about weaving. And is the blouse that you're wearing a pattern of your weaving? The blouse, the shirt you
shirt?
have on?
Yeah.
It looks more like embroidery than weaving.
Yes. First of all, they will weave the shirt like the regular one, and then they will sew it to those beads.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So it's more work. You know, you can just sit and then
Yep.
beat those one at a time.
yes.
Yeah. Another decoration.
So do you use a loom?
Yes.
Okay. And is it a 4-shaft 6-petal loom, or is it a traditional tie loom, or is it, what kind of loom do you use?
They are using the traditional loom, and I don't know what's
It's a backstrap
oh
loom.
backstrap.
A back
Yeah.
shaft
Yep,
loom?
backstrap.
Back strap loom.
Backstrap. Yeah.
You strap on your back
Uh-huh.
and towards a pillar
So-
or whatever.
So you tension it with your back.
Yeah. We I don't know if we have time. We can demonstrate some after this. Yeah.
I would be very interested to see the weaving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, one more question, yeah, and then I will move on to our online audience questions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Vanessa Rose. I'm Executive Director of American Composers Forum. So grateful to be a partner for this event. Thank you so much to our panelists and to our host here. I wanted to just dig a little deeper to some of the things you both offered already, which is related to bringing forward the tradition and honoring, your cultural history while also being a creator yourself, whether it's weaving or musically or interdisciplinary ways. And I'm wondering, do you find conflict sometimes in trying to decide if you are evolving the tradition too much? You're adding, your original spin on it, or your own creative ideas to it, and how you negotiate that personally when you're doing that.
Thanks a lot for passing off the hard questions to me. I'm just kidding. I think so. The training that I've had has all been classical Western training in piano. And I don't, because I grew up here too, I haven't learned any traditional arts from Thailand, and I never have. So when I was developing my project, what I would do was immerse myself in research to just absorb sounds and movements that were from my mom's region in Thailand. And initially, I had hoped to include some traditional instruments in my piece too, but because it was the middle of the pandemic, those resources weren't available. I had planned to go to Thailand to do some more intensive research with that as well. Obviously, it wasn't possible at that time. So I think, what I wasn't trying to recreate any of the traditional Thai music. What I was trying to do was just to maybe absorb and kind of like transmute the crossing of cultures in that way. So in terms of conflict, I don't think that there was really that much conflict, but what I was trying to avoid was trying to pretend that like I could play this traditional music and it was going to be just like it would be from from a specialist in Thailand, you know, because that's not who I am. That's not what I can do. So yeah.
The conflicts, as like the challenge, more like the challenge is a time. It's hard for me to find a time to weave.
And so we'll, couple questions from the online audience. I think this is for both of you. How did reconnecting with that part of your heritage through your art expanded your experience as a person?
Okay, I'll go. I'll say it's connected me with my culture by spending time with the weavers. They're as a Korean woman, I learned a lot from them, and things that I didn't expect. Things that changed me a lot. I say they come here. Every Wednesday they are preparing for what to do. So and they are um, teaching me what I'm learning from them is, you know, like wear your clothes, so that it's not even though for the new generation they don't speak Korean, they don't know how to speak Korean, and they might lose our language, but even though you don't speak the language, at least wear your clothes, your shirt, so that you be know as you are, you people will and know you that you are Korean.
Great, thank you. And so the last online audience question, um, it, they're asking like, how do you think this openness and understanding of different experiences and perspectives of reality can benefit other persons in the U.S.? Um, uh, deep loaded question.
I don't.
Yes, very
What is
deep
it?
and loaded. I think that when we learn, it kind of goes back to that ordinariness of each family, but the specialness that is within that. I think when we learn these histories of each other, and we learn that the experiences um, aren't that. Uh, I shouldn't say unique because we all have our unique experiences, but these are experiences that many of us share. Like, for example, when I was looking at Thi Bui's book, there was a section where she talks about meeting her grandfather for the first time and how that was sort of strange and she didn't know him. And I had the same experience. And I think when we hear, that that you might have had that experience, or you might have had that experience, then we see that these are shared, and that helps us to be more open to one another. I mean, I really think that's how.
Thank you. Nothing from you? Well, thank you to the attendees of this event, and thank you to our speakers for this, Mary Prescott and Hta Thi.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
We have books here, copy of Thi Bui's The Best We Could Do, for free for folks to pick up, but also a copy of The Song Poet by Kaukalia Yang. Our next event as part of this series is November 12th, 1 o'clock in Minneapolis or in St. Paul. Landmark Center, a conversation with Kao Kalia Yang and Jocelyn Hagan. And that is all. Thank you so much for coming and for, again, to the speakers. Thank you.